The first time Warren Phelps heard the joke about his eyes, he was standing in the control room of the Intergalactic Research Station Helios, surrounded by his new Zolarian colleagues. The blue-skinned aliens towered over him, their massive violet eyes taking up nearly half their faces as they inspected him with unconcealed curiosity. "You expect to monitor astronomical anomalies with those?" asked Krell, the senior astronomer, pointing at Warren's face. "Your visual organs are like tiny pebbles compared to ours." The other Zolarians trilled with laughter, their bodies vibrating slightly. Warren had been warned about this during his cultural briefing. Humans were the newest species admitted to the Galactic Coalition, and the Zolarians, with their superior vision, often struggled to understand how humans had ever achieved spaceflight with such limited visual capabilities. "They may be small," Warren replied with a forced smile, "but they work just fine." He'd been selected for this prestigious assignment because of his exceptional talent for pattern recognition and his experience with deep space monitoring systems. The fact that his new coworkers seemed more interested in making fun of his anatomy than his qualifications was frustrating, but he was determined to prove himself. Station Helios orbited an uninhabited planet in the Rigel system, tasked with monitoring space for any unusual phenomena. The region had experienced several unexplained ship disappearances over the past decade, and the Coalition had established the station to investigate potential causes. As days passed, Warren tried to integrate with the crew of 12 Zolarians. Their mockery about his eyes continued, though it gradually shifted from outright ridicule to a kind of background teasing. They'd say things like, "Warren, can you even see the screens from there?" Or "Don't strain those tiny sensors of yours." 3 weeks into his 6-month assignment, Warren was adjusting to the station's rotation schedule and the constant ribbing from his colleagues. He was in the main observation deck, running calibrations on the long-range scanners when he first noticed it. "Hey, Grell," he called to the Zolarian monitoring officer. "Can you check Sector 47B? There's something unusual there." Grell swiveled his massive head, violet eyes focusing on the designated sector of space displayed on the wraparound screens. "I see nothing unusual, human." "Just normal cosmic background radiation." Warren frowned and walked to the main console. "Look, right there." He pointed to a barely perceptible distortion in the starfield. "That patch of space doesn't look right." "Your eyes are playing tricks on you," Grell said dismissively. "Our optical systems are evolved for precise astronomical observation. If there was something there, I would see it." The other Zolarians in the room nodded in agreement. Their species had evolved under the light of 3 suns, developing extraordinary visual acuity and the ability to perceive a much wider range of the electromagnetic spectrum than humans. "I'm telling you, something's there," Warren insisted. "Perhaps you need rest," suggested Vorn, the station commander. "Human visual systems are notoriously unreliable, especially under stress." Warren bit back a sharp retort. He dealt with enough condescension already. Instead, he requested permission to run additional scans on the sector. "If it makes you feel better," Vorn said with a patronizing tone, "but do not disrupt the scheduled monitoring sequence." For the next several days, Warren devoted his off hours to studying the anomaly in Sector 47B. It was subtle, a slight warping of starlight that most instruments couldn't detect, but Warren had always had an eye for patterns, for things that didn't quite fit. It was why Earth's space agency had selected him for this assignment despite the fierce competition. He programmed one of the auxiliary scanners to take continuous readings of the sector and analyze the data for any deviations. On the 4th day, the computer flagged something, a minuscule gravitational fluctuation that shouldn't have been there. Warren brought his findings to the daily briefing. "I've detected a gravitational anomaly in Sector 47B, he announced, displaying his data on the main screen. "It's small, but it's definitely there and it's moving." Krell examined the data with his enormous eyes. "This is within standard error margins for our instruments," he said dismissively. "Cosmic noise, nothing more." "I've filtered for instrumental error," Warren countered. "This is real and it's growing stronger." Commander Vorn sighed, a whistling sound through his narrow nostrils. "Warren, we appreciate your diligence, but you must understand our species has been observing space for millennia. Our eyes and instruments are specifically designed for this purpose. If there was a significant anomaly, we would have detected it." "Just because you can see more colors doesn't mean you see everything," Warren muttered, frustration building. The briefing moved on to other matters, but Warren couldn't let it go. That night, he refined his analysis programs and ran them again. The results were clear. Something was moving through Sector 47B, something that bent light and gravity around it, something that was gradually getting closer to the station. 2 days later, while Warren was alone on night shift, the anomaly changed. It expanded slightly, and for a brief moment, the starlight behind it shifted in a way that revealed a distinct outline. Warren froze, his hands hovering over the controls. It wasn't just an anomaly, it was a ship, a massive one, using some kind of advanced cloaking technology. He immediately called Commander Vorn, who arrived in the control room with several other Zolarians, all irritated at being woken during their rest cycle. "This better be important, human," Vorn said. "There's a cloaked ship out there," Warren said, pointing to his enhanced scans. "Look at the gravitational distortion pattern. It matches the outline of a vessel at least twice the size of this station." The Zolarians crowded around the displays, their huge eyes scanning the readings. "I see nothing conclusive," Krell said after a moment. "These patterns could be caused by any number of natural phenomena." "Natural phenomena don't move in a straight line toward a research station," Warren insisted. "Whatever this is, it's coming our way and it's doing its best not to be seen." Vorn placed a long, fingered hand on Warren's shoulder. "Warren, I understand that humans often experience anxiety in deep space. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Perhaps you should visit Dr. Meal for a mild sedative." Warren shrugged off the hand. "I'm not anxious, I'm trying to warn you. There's something out there, something deliberately hiding itself." "Enough," Vorn said firmly. "You're disrupting station operations with these unfounded concerns. Take the rest of your shift off, that's an order." Fuming, Warren left the control room, but he didn't go to his quarters. Instead, he went to the emergency observation pod, a small bubble on the exterior of the station designed for manual star tracking during power failures. From there, he could observe space directly, without relying on the station's sensors. The pod was cramped and cold, designed for Zolarian physiology rather than human. Warren adjusted the environment controls as best he could and settled in for a long watch. Hours passed as he stared into the void, focusing on the sector where he'd detected the anomaly. Then he saw it not with instruments but with his own eyes. A subtle distortion like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Stars twinkling where they shouldn't be, and behind that shimmer, the faintest outline of something massive. Warren grabbed the pod's communication unit. "Control, this is Phelps. Visual confirmation of cloaked vessel at coordinates 47B089. It's huge and it's coming straight for us. This is not a drill, Warren," Vorn's voice came back, heavy with irritation. "Return to your quarters immediately. This obsession has gone too far. Just look. Send someone else to the observation pod if you don't believe me. All personnel are occupied with actual duties. I won't waste resources chasing shadows." Warren watched in growing horror as the distortion grew larger. Whatever was out there was picking up speed, heading directly toward the station. He made a decision. "I'm activating emergency protocols," he said, using his authorization code to access the station's defense systems from the pod's terminal. Alarms blared throughout the station as shields automatically engaged. Warren knew he'd probably be sent back to Earth for this, possibly even face charges for misuse of emergency systems. But if he was right, the communication unit lit up with incoming calls from confused and angry Zolarians. Warren ignored them, his eyes fixed on the approaching distortion. Suddenly, the shimmer in space vanished, replaced by a massive vessel that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. It was unlike any ship Warren had ever seen, black as space itself, with jagged protrusions that reminded him of teeth or claws. And it was heading straight for the station at attack speed. Control, hostile vessel decloaking. This is not a drill, evasive action now. This time, there was no dismissive response. Instead, Warren heard shouting and the sound of emergency systems engaging throughout the station. The alien ship fired a beam of energy so dark it looked like a tear in space itself. It struck the station's shields, which flared bright blue under the impact. The entire station shuddered. Warren was thrown against the wall of the observation pod as the station's automated defense systems kicked in, firing back at the attacker. Through the transparent dome, he could see energy weapons launching from the station's defense arrays, striking the black ship with little apparent effect. He scrambled back to the pod's terminal, trying to get more information. The ship wasn't in any coalition database. It was completely unknown and clearly hostile. The station rocked again as another blast hit the shields. Warning lights flashed on the terminal. Shield integrity at 62% and falling. Warren activated the pod's emergency return system and was pulled rapidly back into the station proper. He sprinted toward the control room, passing panicked Zolarians in the corridors. When he burst into the control room, chaos reigned. The Zolarians were frantically trying to coordinate the station's defenses while sending distress calls to the nearest coalition outposts. "What is that thing?" Vorn demanded when he saw Warren. "I don't know," Warren admitted, "but I saw it coming days ago. Those distortions I reported, that was it, hiding." Another blast rocked the station. "Shields at 41%, reported Grell from the defense console. "We need to evacuate," Warren said. "The escape pods, they would pick us off one by one," Krell interrupted. "Our only hope is to hold out until help arrives." "And how long will that be?" Warren asked. Vorn's expression was grim. "The nearest coalition vessel is 3 days away. We won't last 3 hours at this rate." Warren pushed his way to the sensor station. "Let me see what we're dealing with." The Zolarians, no longer concerned with his supposedly inferior eyes, made way. Warren studied the scans of the attacking vessel, looking for any weakness, any pattern that might help them. "There," he said after a moment, pointing to a specific section of the ship. "The energy signatures are different there. It might be their power core or propulsion system." "How can you tell?" asked Krell, leaning in with his massive eyes. "It's not about the resolution of the image," Warren explained quickly. "It's about pattern recognition. Humans might not see as many colors as you, but our brains evolved to spot predators hiding in complex visual environments. That section stands out because the pattern breaks there." Vorn didn't waste time arguing. "Target all weapons on that section," he ordered. The station's remaining weapons concentrated fire on the area Warren had identified. For several tense moments, nothing seemed to happen. Then a visible ripple ran through the black ship and it veered slightly off course. "It's working," shouted Grell. But their victory was short-lived. The alien vessel recovered quickly and launched another attack, this one even more powerful than before. The station's shields flared brightly, then collapsed entirely. "Shields down," Krell reported, panic in his voice. "Hull breach on levels 3 through 5, seal those sections," Vorn ordered. "All personnel to emergency stations." Warren's mind raced. Without shields, they were defenseless. But something about the attack pattern triggered a thought. "They're toying with us," he realized aloud. "If they wanted to destroy the station outright, they could have done it already." "What are you saying?" Vorn demanded. "I think they want to board us," Warren said. "That last attack specifically targeted our shield generators, not our life support or core systems." As if confirming his words, the station's proximity alarms began blaring. The alien vessel was moving alongside the station, extending what looked like docking mechanisms. "They're going to board us," Vorn said, realizing Warren was right. "All personnel prepare for intruder defense." The Zolarians moved with surprising speed, retrieving weapons from emergency lockers and taking up defensive positions. Warren was handed a standard-issue energy pistol, though he'd only had basic training with such weapons. "Stay close to me," Vorn told him. "Your eyes spotted them when ours could not. Perhaps they will see other things we miss." It was the first time any of the Zolarians had acknowledged Warren's abilities without mockery. Under different circumstances, he might have savored the moment. The station shuddered as the alien ship made contact. Metal groaned, and then came the unmistakable sound of cutting tools biting into the hull. "They're coming through at Junction 12A, reported Grell, watching the internal sensors. "That's 2 sections away from us." Vorn organized the defense, positioning crew members at key points along the approach to the control room. Warren found himself with Krell and 2 others, guarding a choke point in the main corridor. "I owe you an apology, human," Krell said quietly as they waited. "I dismissed your observations because of prejudice," Warren nodded grimly. "Let's focus on surviving this. We can discuss interspecies sensitivity training later." They didn't have to wait long. A heavy thud echoed down the corridor, followed by the sound of something large moving quickly toward them. Then they saw their attackers for the first time. The creatures were massive, easily 8 feet tall, with bodies that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with a predatory grace that belied their size, and their forms seemed to shift and blur as they advanced, making them difficult to focus on. "What are they?" whispered one of the Zolarians, his huge eyes wide with fear. Warren squinted, trying to make out details. The creatures had multiple limbs, 6 or 8. It was hard to tell with their shifting forms and what looked like elongated heads with no visible eyes. "Fire," ordered Krell, and the corridor lit up with energy blasts from their weapons. The creatures moved with incredible speed, dodging most of the shots. One took a direct hit and staggered briefly before continuing its advance. They were fast, resilient, and clearly lethal. As the creatures closed in, Warren noticed something odd about their movement pattern. "They're avoiding the light," he shouted. "The emergency lights in the ceiling, they're staying away from the brightest spots." Krell immediately adjusted his aim, firing at the ceiling panels to shatter them and shower the corridor with intense light. The creatures recoiled, their forms becoming more solid and defined in the brightness. "Keep firing at the lights," Warren ordered. "Force them into the bright spots." The strategy worked, momentarily halting the creatures' advance. In the improved lighting, Warren could see them more clearly. Their bodies were covered in some kind of natural armor, and what he had thought were heads were actually raised upper torsos housing sensory organs that were clearly adapted for darkness. "They're nocturnal predators," Warren realized. "They hunt in darkness and use that cloaking ability to ambush prey. That's why they are attacking us. We're prey to them." One of the creatures let out a high-pitched shriek that made Warren's ears ring painfully. Then they retreated, disappearing back down the corridor. "Did we drive them off?" asked a hopeful Zolarian. "I doubt it," Warren said. "They're regrouping, adapting to our defense." He was proven right moments later when the lights throughout the station suddenly went out. Emergency power kicked in, but it only activated minimal lighting, exactly the conditions the creatures would prefer. "They've cut the main power," Krell said, his voice tight with tension. "They're smarter than they look." Warren tapped his communicator. "Commander Vorn, they've cut the power and retreated. I think they're going to try a different approach." "Understood," came Vorn's tense reply. "Fall back to the control room. We need to consolidate our defenses." As they moved carefully through the dimly lit corridors, Warren's mind raced. The creatures had technology advanced enough for interstellar travel and cloaking, yet they attacked like animals, using stealth and physical power rather than advanced weapons. It was as if they'd retained their evolutionary hunting strategies even as they developed technologically. The control room had been fortified as best as possible, with barricades constructed from furniture and equipment. The remaining crew, now down to 10 Zolarians plus Warren, gathered there, weapons ready. "Report," Vorn demanded as they entered. "They're nocturnal predators," Warren explained quickly. "They avoid bright light and they seem to hunt by ambush. That's why they cloaked their ship. It's an extension of their natural hunting strategy." "How do you know all this?" asked Grell. "Pattern recognition," Warren said. "It's what humans do. We evolved as both predator and prey on Earth. We're good at understanding hunting behaviors." Can we use this knowledge to defend ourselves? Vorn asked practically. Warren nodded. We need to restore full power to the lighting systems. Make the station as bright as possible, and we need to avoid being separated. They'll pick off stragglers first. Vorn nodded. The main power controls are in engineering, 3 levels down. We need a team to get there and restore power. I'll go, Warren volunteered. I know what to look for if they're hiding. Not alone, Vorn said. Krell, Grell, go with him. The rest of us will hold here and coordinate through the communication system. Armed with their energy weapons and additional light sources, the small team set out for engineering. The station felt alien in the dim emergency lighting, shadows stretching in unfamiliar patterns across the walls and floors. They moved cautiously, Warren in the lead, scanning constantly for any sign of the predators. The humans' supposedly inferior eyes were now their greatest asset. Warren's ability to detect subtle movements and disruptions in the visual field, alerting them twice to hiding creatures, allowing the team to avoid direct confrontation. How can you see them? Grell whispered after Warren spotted a predator lurking near a junction. They're almost invisible in this light. It's not about seeing them directly, Warren explained as they took an alternate route. It's about seeing what they displace, the shadows that move wrong, the slight bending of light around their edges. Humans evolved hunting on savannas where predators used camouflage. We learned to spot things that don't quite fit the environment. They reached engineering without major incident, but the door was sealed shut from the inside. They've already been here, Krell said, examining the door. They've overridden the controls. Warren studied the access panel. Can we bypass it? Possibly, Grell said, already working on the panel. But it will take time. Time we don't have, Warren muttered, glancing nervously down the corridor behind them. They know this is where we'd come. They're probably watching us right now. As if summoned by his words, a shadow detached itself from the wall further down the corridor. Then another. And another. Work faster, Warren urged, raising his weapon. We've got company. The predators approached slowly, more cautious now that they knew their prey could detect them. Warren counted at least 5 of the creatures, moving in a coordinated pattern that would cut off their escape. Almost got it, Grell muttered, fingers flying over the control panel. Warren and Krell positioned themselves to cover Grell, weapons aimed at the advancing predators. Remember, aim for their sensory organs, Warren said, and try to create as much light as possible. The predators charged suddenly, moving with that uncanny speed. Warren fired, his shot catching one creature in what he hoped was a vulnerable spot. The predator staggered but kept coming. Krell fired multiple shots in quick succession, his larger weapon more powerful than Warren's. One of the predators fell, its body convulsing briefly before going still. Got it, Grell shouted as the door slid open. Inside, quickly, they backed into engineering, still firing to keep the predators at bay. The door slid shut just as one of the creatures lunged forward, its limb catching in the closing gap. The door mechanism whined in protest as the creature fought to force it open. Warren aimed carefully and fired at the trapped limb. The predator shrieked and withdrew, allowing the door to close fully. That won't hold them for long, Krell said, already moving to secure the door from the inside. Warren turned to survey engineering. The room was large, filled with humming equipment and control panels. And standing at the main power console was one of the predators. It turned toward them, its form solidifying slightly in the brighter light of engineering. Warren could now see that what he had taken for a featureless face was actually covered in fine sensory tentacles, constantly moving and tasting the air. Don't move, Warren whispered to the others. It's reacting to motion. The predator tilted its elongated torso, the sensory tentacles waving in their direction. It took a step forward, then another. Warren had an idea. The emergency flares, he whispered. In the wall cabinet behind you, Grell. Grell reached back slowly, opening the cabinet and extracting a flare. The predator's head swiveled toward the slight movement. On my mark, Warren said softly. Light it and throw it directly at that thing, then we all fire at once. The pounding on the door behind them intensified as the other predators tried to break through. Now, Warren shouted. Grell activated the flare, which burst into brilliant white light, and threw it at the predator. Simultaneously, all three of them opened fire. The creature shrieked in what sounded like agony, its form writhing as the intense light and energy blasts struck it. It collapsed, its body seeming to fold in on itself. Warren rushed to the power console. "Cover me while I restore main power," he said, already working the controls. Krell and Grell positioned themselves to watch both the fallen predator and the door, which was beginning to buckle under the assault from outside. Warren worked frantically, bypassing damaged systems and rerouting power from non-essential functions. "Almost there," he muttered. "Just need to override the emergency protocols." The door gave way with a screech of tearing metal. Predators poured into the room just as Warren slammed his hand down on the final control. The station hummed as main power surged back online. Lights throughout engineering and presumably the entire station blazed to full brightness. The predators recoiled, their forms seeming to solidify and become more vulnerable in the intense light. "Fire!" Warren shouted, diving for cover behind a console. Krell and Grell unleashed a barrage of energy blasts at the disoriented predators. Two more fell, but the others recovered quickly, adapting to the light faster than Warren had hoped. "The light's not enough," Krell shouted as a predator leaped toward him. He fired point blank, knocking the creature back but not stopping it. Warren scanned the room desperately, looking for anything they could use. His eyes fell on the environmental controls. "The UV sterilization system," he shouted. "Grell, can you activate it?" Grell dove for the environmental panel. "It's not designed to operate outside the air purification chambers. Override it," Warren called back, firing at a predator that was circling toward him. "Maximum intensity station-wide." As Grell worked, Warren and Krell fought a desperate holding action. The predators had adapted to the bright light and were using their superior speed and strength to press the attack. Warren took a glancing blow from one creature that sent him sprawling across the floor, his weapon skittering away. The predator loomed over him, sensory tentacles quivering. Warren scrambled backwards, searching frantically for any weapon. His hand closed around a heavy tool, some kind of wrench. He swung it with all his strength, connecting with the predator's torso. The creature barely flinched. It reached for Warren with multiple limbs, clearly intending to tear him apart. "Got it," Grell shouted from across the room. "UV activating now." The regular lights dimmed briefly, then came back on with a different quality, a harsh, blue-tinged illumination that made Warren's skin prickle. The effect on the predators was immediate and dramatic. They shrieked in unison, their bodies seeming to smoke or steam under the ultraviolet radiation. Their forms, previously fluid and difficult to focus on, became rigid and clearly defined. Their skin, Warren realized. The UV is damaging their outer layer, maybe even their cloaking ability. The predators retreated in disarray, abandoning their attack in favor of escaping the harmful radiation. Krell and Grell pressed the advantage, firing continuously as the creatures fled. Warren staggered to his feet, retrieving his weapon and joining the counterattack. They pursued the predators into the corridor, where the UV lighting was having the same effect throughout the station. "Commander Vorn," Warren called into his communicator, "the UV is working, they're retreating." "Confirmed," came Vorn's voice. "We're seeing the same here. They're heading back toward their breach point." Warren, Krell, and Grell followed at a safe distance, making sure the predators were actually leaving rather than regrouping. When they reached the hull breach where the alien ship had docked, they found several predators already boarding their vessel. Others lay motionless on the deck, apparently too badly injured by the UV to escape. "Should we pursue them onto their ship?" Krell asked, weapon raised. Warren shook his head. "Too risky. They know the environment and they might have countermeasures for the UV there. Let's make sure they all leave, then seal the breach." They watched as the last of the predators retreated to their ship. As soon as the boarding tube retracted, Grell activated the emergency hull seal, a force field that would temporarily contain atmosphere until permanent repairs could be made. The alien ship disengaged from the station and moved away, its cloaking technology apparently damaged by the UV as it remained fully visible. "They're leaving," Grell reported, checking the sensors, moving away at high speed. Warren slumped against the wall, suddenly aware of the pain in his side where the predator had struck him. "Let's hope they don't come back with friends." Back in the control room, the mood was a mixture of relief and grim determination. 3 Zolarians had been killed in the attack and several others were injured. The station had sustained significant damage, but it was still functional. "We need to warn the Coalition about these creatures," Vorn said as they gathered around the communication console. "If they've been responsible for the disappearances in this sector, other stations and ships could be at risk." Warren nodded wearily. "They're hunters. They see other species as prey, and they're smart enough to use technology to enhance their natural abilities." "We would never have survived without your insight, Warren," Vorn said, placing a long, fingered hand on Warren's shoulder. "Your eyes may be small, but they saw what ours could not." The other Zolarians murmured in agreement, their attitudes toward the human completely transformed by the shared experience. "It's not about the size or capability of the organ," Warren said. "It's about how you use it. Humans might not have the most impressive eyes in the galaxy, but we've spent millennia learning to notice things that don't quite fit predators hiding in plain sight." "A valuable evolutionary trait," Krell acknowledged. "One we had forgotten the importance of in our technological advancement." As the station's medical team treated the injured and preparations began for repairs, Warren found himself thinking about the predators. They would likely return creatures that evolved as apex predators rarely abandoned a hunting ground after one setback. But next time, the Coalition would be ready. The Zolarians had learned an important lesson about respecting different evolutionary adaptations, and Warren had proven that sometimes the ability to spot what others miss was more valuable than any physical advantage. 3 months later, as Warren prepared to welcome a new group of human specialists to Station Helios experts in predator behavior and countermeasures, he smiled at the memory of how his tiny eyes had saved everyone. The Zolarians no longer mocked human visual organs. In fact, mixed human-Zolarian crews had become standard throughout the sector, combining the different strengths of both species. The predators had returned twice more, with modified ships and new tactics, but each time the combined human-Zolarian defenses had driven them off. Warren's recognition of their hunting patterns had led to the development of specialized countermeasures that were now standard issue on all Coalition vessels in the region. As Commander Vorn liked to say during station briefings, "Never underestimate different evolutionary adaptations. The eyes that see the predator first are the ones that matter most, regardless of their size." Warren couldn't agree more. In the vastness of space, where danger could come from any direction, the ability to spot what others missed might be the most valuable adaptation of all.